Hello there and welcome to the Surrey Library social media channel. This week we're supporting Get Creative Week at hashtag Get Creative at Home, which is a campaign to encourage cultural activity and encourage people to try something new and creative. During this time, the power of creativity unites people and supports them to maintain good mental health and is more important than it has ever been before. There are many ways that you can get creative, from baking and crocheting to colouring and paper craft. We'd love you to share your creative pieces with us by tagging us in them on social media. We'll be sharing lots of resources and inspiration on our social media pages, so check out our Twitter and Facebook if you're looking for some inspiration. Today we're going to be making mug hugs. Okay, we're going to make these mug hugs in two different ways. One of them is connected by Velcro, and one of them we're using a button. So let's get started and let's see what we need. To make mug hugs, you're going to need the following equipment. You need some yarn and some knitting needles. You need some knitter's needles. These are the type of needles that allow you to thread yarn onto the needle and sew with it. You also need some normal sewing needles that just use thread. You need some sewing thread. And you need some scissors. If you wish to make the Velcro version of the mug hug, then you will also need some Velcro. If you wish to make the mug hug with a button, then you will need some buttons and a hair tie. Shall we go and get started? Okay then, let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is we need to cast on 50 stitches. So what we do is we take our yarn and we wrap it around one of the needles and we tie it in a knot, a slip knot. Okay then, so now we'll do our first stitch. So if we put the right hand needle into the stitch we've made on the left hand needle, bring the yarn round, bring the right hand needle underneath the other stitch, so you have two stitches, and then you transfer it over to the left hand needle. Let me go over that for you again. So you put your needle into the stitch on the left hand side, bring the wool round, bring the right needle down and underneath, and then transfer it to the needle on the left hand side. So now you need to continue that process until you've got 50 stitches on your needle. Okay, now that we've got 50 stitches on our needle, we can now start to knit. So what we need to do is we need to take the right needle and put it in underneath the first stitch on the left hand needle, bringing our yarn round in a similar way to when we cast it on. Bring the right needle underneath the stitch, and then we pull the left stitch off the needle. And then we've got one stitch on the right needle and all the rest of the stitches are still on the left needle. Let me go over that again for you. So you need to put your right needle underneath the stitch, bring your yarn round, and then you bring the right needle underneath the stitch and then you pull it off. And then you need to continue doing that until we get to the end of the row. Okay, so when you start row 2, your needles need to switch hands, and then you just continue knitting in the same way as you did before, making sure you're going back in the opposite direction. So you need to keep knitting until your piece measures 6 centimetres, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to cast it off. Okay, so now we need to cast off our work because it's now 6 centimetres wide. So what you need to do is you need to knit the first stitch of this row and then knit the second stitch on this row, and then you pull the first stitch by going in from the top over the top of that stitch to cast it off, and then that's one stitch casted off. So then we knit another one, and in the same way we bring the previous stitch over the top, and then we continue like that till the end of the row. As you reach the end of your last stitch, you need to make sure that you knit it, bring the second to last stitch over the top, and then you make it a little bit bigger. You get your scissors and you cut off your yarn, making sure that you've got an end that we can then sew in a moment. Bring that through to make a knot, and then you've cast off your mug hug. Okay, so now we need to sew in our ends. So if you take your knitter's needle and thread your yarn into the needle, and then you just need to thread it through the ridges of your knitting in a straight line. About 3 or 4 ridges is usually enough, and pull it. Don't pull it too tight. It still needs to breathe. And then you just keep going up and down 2 or 3 times. And then I tend to finish it at the edge, so that I can then take my scissors and trim off any excess yarn. So then on the other end, we just need to repeat the process, and then, as I said before, we cut off our excess yarn, and that's all done. Okay, so now we're going to finish off our mug hug. I've cut some Velcro, which will come together, so you need to split it, and you need to take your mug hug, and then we just need to get a needle and thread. This just needs to be a normal sewing needle, and then we attach the Velcro to each end. So one end, it doesn't matter which piece of Velcro you use, and then you just need to sew it onto your mug hug. You will find that Velcro is quite stiff, so you may have to push it to get it to do it. But you just need to do a few stitches just to make sure that your Velcro is being held in place. And then I always do an extra couple of stitches over stitches that I've already done, just to secure the thread. And then you just cut off the excess thread and we're done. Okay, so once you've sewn on one side, you need to sew the other piece of Velcro on. So you need to flip over your mug hug so that they're on different sides. They need to be on different ends. And then we literally just sew the other bit of Velcro to the other side. And then once you've done that, you're ready to attach your mug hug to your mug. I'll leave you to finish that bit of sewing. Okay, so now we're going to make our second type of mug hug. So we need our button and our hair tie. So what we do is we take our already knitted strip, and then at one end, I probably put it up the other way, and then on one end we just need to sew our button. So I've already threaded my needle with some thread, and then I literally just need to guide it through the holes on the button. I tend to do this a couple of times just to make sure that it's very, very secure. If you had some coordinating thread, now would be a good time to use it if you wanted to, but it doesn't matter too much. Then once I've done it a couple of times, I literally just thread through a little bit of my knitting at the back, just to make sure that it is definitely secure, because you don't want your button to fall off. And then we can just cut off the excess thread, and then I'm going to tie another knot in the bottom. Okay, so for the other end we just need to take our hair bobble and we pinch it, and then turn over our mug hug, and then we just sew it roughly in the middle. It can be a little bit fiddly. If you've got some pins, you could pin this to the mug hug just to hold it secure while you stitch. Oh, that's a little bit of a big stitch. And then I tend to go up and down just a couple of times, just to make sure that it's secure and it's not going to fall off. But this can be a little bit of a fiddly process. And then bring it through so that you're cutting off your thread on the end where no one's going to see it. And then you have your finished mug hug. Okay, so there we have it. We've got our 2 mug hugs. We've got the one with the button and the one with the Velcro. It'd be really great if you could share your projects if you decide to make these in the comments below. Don't forget that we are supporting Get Creative at Home at #GetCreativeAtHome, and you can also find them on their website getcreativeuk.com. Thank you very much for joining me today.